So what are you saying? What I'm saying is all I really want is someone to hold me and tell me that everything is gonna be all right. Everything is gonna be BBJO podcast. I wanna heal, I wanna feel what I thought was never real. I wanna let go of the pain that I felt so long. Erase all the pain till it's gone. I wanna heal, I wanna feel like I'm close to something real. I wanna find something I wanted all along. Somewhere I belong. There goes Davis. Oh my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game. Auburn's going to win the football game. Better. Great play by Brady. Looks right to Clayman. And he got it. Who do you think you are? I am. Everyone is looking at me.
Not gonna do not pray for easy lives, my friends. Pray to be stronger men.
I wanna heal.
I just got three things to say. God bless our troops.
I wanna let go of the pain I felt so long. Erase all the pain till it's gone. I wanna heal. I wanna feel like I'm close to something real. I wanna
God bless America.
somewhere I belong. I will never know myself until I do this on my own. And I will never feel anything else until my wounds are healed. I will never think anything till I break away from me. I will break away. I'll find
Just in front of that right there. The double plus the reach out. Now watch this drive.
And gentlemen, start your Take two, outside! Great shot!
Hi, welcome to the BBJO podcast. We're back. I hope you enjoyed that little intro. We're trying something new with that. I'm here with Leon,
Yeah,
and Ilion is a special guest. Ilion's here joining us.
glad to be here.
Absolutely. We're doing a little, call it a little debate here. It's about, was the ATF responsible for what happened in Waco, Texas? Now, Leon, what's your stance on this? Do you want to share?
The ATF was not at fault, and it was the Davidians that started the fire.
All right, and then me and Ilion are obviously on the right side. I mean, the other side of that stance. So we're just going to work our way through here in a chronological timeline of the events. So first thing, I wanted to talk about Ruby Ridge. Now you're familiar, obviously, right?
Yeah, it was the standoff to like two high pressure standoffs between the Davidians and the ATF.
Excuse me, Leon, but I believe the Davidians weren't present at Ruby Ridge.
Yeah, I'm not.
I'm not sure if I misheard that.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Wait,
but
my sources are coming.
okay. Well, I just wanted to talk about Ruby Ridge because while the debate is about Waco, I think you can't talk about Waco without Ruby Ridge, as
The same, intelligence agency is involved. So.
well, Ruby Ridge was a joint
Oh,
collaboration between the ATF and FBI.
Yeah, it was
And-
before it. It was the predecessor. Like it was the context.
Well, yeah, on the timeline here, Waco was February 1993 and Ruby Ridge was August 92, about a 6-month difference there. But, a lot of the same agents were present at both. Similar procedures were used where they sent an informant in or undercover agent, if you will, to gain the trust of the people involved that were being investigated. And then, it ends pretty tragically.
And given the, like, succession of events, like, anything that happens at Ruby Ridge will have an effect on what happens at Waco, just because they're so close to one another.
I absolutely agree. I don't think you can talk about one without the other.
Yeah, I understand, but it was like a year between. They were
6
like
months.
yeah, but they
About.
were half a year. They were like retrained, so it does have some impact. But you also have to.
They were
see-
retrained?
Well, there was training done afterwards because they were heavily criticized by the media.
What's your source on that?
That they were heavily criticized on the
No,
media,
that
or
they were trained.
Well, the ATF constantly trains their agents, and afterwards
Yeah, what's your source?
that they train their agents.
I mean, I don't think you necessarily need to source on that.
Well,
Source
just
that they-
specifically
well,
that
I mean,
they
they don't
were
hire
trained.
random people, and they do
like
have
we
training.
know the ATF received the criticism of Ruby Ridge. It's on their, they have an article about it on their website and whatnot. What I would, say in response to that would just be that, because we always have to hold a federal agency accountable for what it does, especially when it involves, the power of states being triumphed or superseded by the interests of the federal government. We always need to hold them accountable, even if they have learned from the past.
Now let me just interject here. Do you agree with what he just said? Because I know your stance is that the ATF was not in the wrong for Waco, Texas. But right now, while they're closely related, we are talking about Ruby Ridge.
Yeah,
So
they
do you
were
agree?
they were wrong at Ruby Ridge, and
What were they wrong for exactly?
for killing that woman when she was holding the infant.
So they weren't wrong for killing the dogs and the teenage boy too, just the
They
woman.
were totally wrong throughout, but it was a pivotal moment for them to learn from it because they got so much criticism.
I'm glad you said that. So you think they learned from this event?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go into Waco, Texas here, because wow, that is quite the statement you just made. Now, you said they learned. So at the end, they ended up killing the man's wife, his baby son, and a teenager that was staying on the property, all over 1/8 of an inch too short of a barrel of a shotgun that he sawed off because they coerced him into selling it to the undercover agent. After he refused multiple times, they kept asking him because they really wanted to get this arrest. And when he did it, they didn't even arrest him right then and there. They tried to convert him over to joining the ATF as another undercover informant, which seems to be more cultish than the Davidians themselves. So getting into the Davidians, they do the same exact strategy on the Davidians. They send someone in, they try to get them to, admit their guilt, which is a little bit unethical, I would say. I don't know.
Well,
it's
that's
a little
just
bit of a
procedure.
gray
I
area.
mean, speaking of procedurally, I am curious. Like, what is your stance on coercion as an ATF tactic, an FBI
It
tactic?
seems a little bit like
Do you,
entrapment.
do you believe it's valid or fair use of?
Well, it is valid. You have to see it from a different perspective.
I mean, legally, I
What
understand.
perspective?
Legally, it is. I mean,
they're
just
trying
morally.
to minimize. They're trying to minimize casualties, and they should always try to take the most peaceful approach first.
Absolutely.
Wait, hold on. What are you talking about? Because they coerced him into selling him the weapons.
No, I'm not talking about coercion, but
coercion.
yeah. But I'm talking about sending in an agent to try to make them admit guilt at Waco, and also at Ruby Ridge when they're trying to commit him or convert him into an informant.
Well, that was after they got him to try to sell them the weapons. But my philosophy here is I don't think he would have done anything illegal if they weren't even there. So I think that they're there to get him to do something illegal, which seems like they're fishing for a problem here.
Yeah, I
Which
agree.
is-
I think in this situation they were fishing, and it was negligence on their part, and they should have had
So-
better training at this. But I feel like they learned from this because of how much criticism they received from the media, and the ATF constantly trains their agents. So
I want
they,
you to
they
read
would not
that
want
be-
this issue to happen again.
Like, wouldn't that be a statement against coercion? Because it's like you don't,
No, I'm
believe-
against coercion, but I'm.
But they
for-
learned not to do coercion again.
Yeah, well, they're against trying to make him
At
sell
Ruby Ridge.
at Ruby Ridge.
Yeah.
And they learned from
I
Ruby
mean,
Ridge, and
yeah.
you think they didn't do that
But I
again.
don't.
Because
But I
here's the
don't
thing.
think they were. I don't think they were wrong in trying to convert him into an informant.
Yeah, it just seems like
And when you said
he
they
was a
sent,
good man taken advantage of. But that honestly, let's move on from Ruby Ridge. I think we've talked about that as much as we can while it relates to Waco. During Waco, I wanted to talk about a little bit beforehand, and then we get into the siege itself. It says here that the siege may have been on false pretense to begin with, as during the standoff, speculation arose that at least one person inside the Branch Davidian compound was a licensed gun dealer who used federal firearms license to help build the Colt's arsenal. Colt is used lightly there. That we have an official source on that, and
As stipulated.
I think that if that is true, as there's speculation around it, that would mean that the whole siege and the casualties that came of it were for no reason.
Well,
What do you think of that?
The pretenses were valid. They thought they had illegal automatic firearms, and they had a stockpile of firearms there, and thousands of bullets and ammunition.
But does it
Yeah.
matter that they could have been legally?
It does matter that they thought it was illegal.
But don't you think that a government of that, or a government agency of that high standard, who just came off of Ruby Ridge, would have learned to do a little bit more research beforehand?
Well, they were trying to research them. That's why they also sent someone in before the shootout happened to try to figure out if they had automatic weapons.
That's a good point, actually. I like that.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up, I just want to see how you respond. On the ATF's website, on their page, Remembering Waco, it's one of the most direct sources for their recollection of what happened at Waco. Basically, they never they seem to dance around this idea through a penumbra of someone who wasn't David Koresh could have had been a licensed FFL, had a registered FFL, which would make the whole operation by the ATF illegal because then they'd be allowed to manufacture automatic firearms. I'm not saying it's absolutely true. I don't have a source saying that one of the members did have an FFL, but how come the ATF isn't really transparent with these things?
You said to make automatic weapons.
Yeah, shouldn't we know shouldn't there be a profile of every person who was at Waco, every Branch Davidian at Waco, or at least every adult male? Because if even a single one had an FFL, then the whole operation wouldn't need to happen. Those automatic firearms would be a legal manufacture and sale. So I know they are clear. The page on.
Yeah, but they're not allowed to make automatic weapons even if they had a FFL.
No, they
No,
are.
yeah,
Weren't
actually,
automatic
in the state of
weapons
Texas,
outlawed quite a long time ago?
Well, this
in
is
the National
1993.
Firearms Act.
Yeah, before that.
In the National Firearms Act in the 1930s, I'm not exactly sure which year, 1930 something. Yes, these weapons were deemed that Congress can regulate them, and they're going to establish a federal agency to do so through the executive branch, which ends up being the ATF. But my point is, as in the state of Texas, because everything is built off of federalism. This is what the federal government is regulating, but by the 10th Amendment, any powers not reserved to the federal government are brought to the states. So in the state of Texas, you can manufacture and actually sell firearms that are NFA items, they're legally called, as long as you are a registered FFL. And the reason why this can coexist with the federal government under the 10th Amendment is because to register as an FFL holder, you do so through the ATF. The ATF clears you either hold an FFL or you don't. You pay a $200 tax and that, you know what I mean?
May I say something?
Yes.
I have an official source here that states virtually anyone over 21 years old who is a convicted felon and has $30 can obtain one of these licenses from the ATF themselves and can order guns wholesale via carriers in unlimited quantities that are exempt from retail sale laws and waiting periods and background checks. So this is not a hard thing to get their hands on, especially in 1993 when this happened.
Yeah.
So it is very believable someone there could have had what Ileana was referring to, the FFL.
But I'm
And
talking
if they did, this all would have been for naught. And I would like to, what were you going to say?
But we're talking about automatic weapons though.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
in
included.
1993 you can't.
This is Texas.
I'm talking about federal law. Even now, you can only, as an individual, it depends. It's a little different with dealers or whatnot. But as an individual, you can only own automatic weapons if they're over 100 years old. And to do that, you would need an immense amount of cash because you can only buy them 100 years ago. There's so few left that it's like a commodity. So there's no way he would have had the hundreds of guns. And also, really, the only guns you could buy that are automatic from 100 years ago would be 22 caliber. But even that, as a dealer, because you can still own automatic weapons as a dealer, you would need special licenses, and you would need to be a dealer to even have this. and you cannot manufacture automatic weapons as a dealer. You would need to have special certifications as a manufacturer.
Well, that's what he got. He got those special
Like, are you referring to the assault weapons ban of 1990? Man, I'm forgetting.
I think it was like yeah, it was quite a while ago.
Was it after 1993?
I'm pretty sure it was before that.
Well, right here it's saying that he did that, and you're not keeping in mind that there are over 100 people in this compound, most of which over the age of 21, and they weren't lacking money. I mean, they afford these acres upon acres of land, and they feed themselves. And I mean, some of them come from wealthy backgrounds from their families, and when they join this compound here,
Yeah, it was
they
in
bring money with them.
1986. They had like a heavy restriction on
Was this a
automatic
federal
weapons.
law or a
It
state?
was
This
feder-
is
it was
yeah, passed through
federal.
Congress.
It was a federal law, and it was a ban for civilian ownership. Actually, it was only if manufactured after 1986.
So they couldn't have the parts.
Well, like
No,
here's
you
the thing,
can't.
Leon.
It would be illegal to
Sorry.
create an automatic weapon, even if you have the parts. Even now, like you can't just create a weapon.
But is that unlicensed or with the license?
It doesn't matter if you have the license or without it. It's a federal law. Obviously, you would still need a firearm license, but to have automatic weapon, you cannot create them only if you're like a actual licensed, like huge manufacturer, not it's like an individual.
Well, let me.
Hey,
What's going on here?
Thank you.
what are you
See you later.
Anyways,
Moving on from that.
I think one thing I just wanted to bring up is so.
Well, then can I say something here?
That was my source right there.
Yeah. All right. Well, you're saying that it's illegal to build all of the weapons, even if they have the parts. Here, from the same source, another quote says, he, referring to Buns, which is someone in the compound, one of the Davidians, testified in court, testified under oath. So this is truth. Take this as a very reliable source here. He saw all the parts needed to make a fully automatic assault rifle or machine gun, but did not know if a complete gun was ever constructed. Meaning, if he didn't know, how the heck would the ATF have known? So that means that it's not even confirmed if they did create these guns they're referring to. It's just they're suspected. So if I have all of the components to create ricin in my basement, which is a little unlikely, but not unheard of, I'm ordering them on Amazon like 10 weeks apart from each other from different stores, or not even, like Amazon, Walmart. I do this, and the ATF happens to find out. Not even the ATF, whatever government agency is responsible. Do they have the right to illegally or questionably spy on me, infiltrate, gain my trust, and then raid my home where I live
Well,
because I might be doing something illegal?
Well, it's around context of the intent. So
I'm asking you that question. Just
well,
answer that.
yeah, but it only depends on context.
So you're saying that's okay for them
Depending
to do?
on context, if they thought
The context of this game.
yeah, but if they knew you were like part of a known terrorist organization,
Whoa, I have a problem with that.
or if they thought for sure they had real evidence that you intended to use it for these nefarious purposes as making ricin, then they would have enough pretenses to investigate you.
But what are you cross-comparing here? What are you saying? Are you implying the Davidians were a terrorist organization and they had...
Well, the Davidians were a cult, and they saw that
Allegedly.
And that they had a mass amount of resources, and they were building a commune, and they had these
All legally, mind you.
Yeah, and they were buying weapon parts.
Legally.
Legally, they were buying weapon parts, but it's illegal to craft automatic weapons.
Not if you own the license that they did allegedly own.
Yeah,
And even then, they don't know if they were crafting
At this time, you weren't allowed to make automatic weapons.
without a license.
Not the license an individual would have. A manufacturer, yes. Like
He
Lockheed,
was a manufacturer.
Lockheed Martin as
He
well.
registered as a manufacturer.
Of automatic weapons.
Yes.
And
with the
Leon,
license.
the assault weapons ban you were referring to, it was present during the time of Waco,
Yes.
but I'm pretty sure there's one of the key components of the bill of legislation is like if the if the weapon has to be past a certain date and also automatic to be an illegal item even with an FFL. And I'm pretty sure all the rifles that David Koresh had were, correct me if I'm wrong,
All I see
M16
is
pattern
the-
rifles, right? Which were all produced sometime around the 60s and 70s. So wouldn't that not, what happened? Wouldn't that not be an issue with the federal assault weapons ban?
Yeah, if they bought it before this, but they would have to like
The
register
parts,
it, and they would have to like
you can buy it after if the parts were made before. Like let's say I
not just the
wanna-
parts. It has to be the gun itself, not just the
Well,
parts.
they're not buying the guns together. They're buying the guns in pieces. You have the
Yeah, but
they're
you're
buying
not
the
allowed
upper
to create.
receiver,
You're
lower
not allowed
receiver.
to create it. You can only buy the weapons if they're created before this date.
I'm going to interject here. I think that there might be a fundamental disagreement we have here. I think we might have conflicting sources. So I'm going to say that we move on from the gun building aspect of it, and we go into the siege itself.
I agree.
So let's just go chronologically
You
here.
said they had an FFL license.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, but they would also have to register these weapons while they were making them.
But we don't know if they even were making them.
Well, the
They
whole idea.
didn't
but-
make them technically.
But they were suspected to making them illegally by not registering them. If they registered them, then the ATF would know, and in doing so, they wouldn't be investigated at all because the weapons would be registered.
Yeah, but the whole idea behind holding an FFL is if you're going to make a business, let's say, off of selling and producing firearms, like that's going to be your main thing, like legally, of course, then you're going to bear the parts to produce a firearm while it's not registered because you haven't done that. Like that, everything has an order of events. Like if you're making these firearms, at some point, yes, they have to be registered. That's absolutely true, legally speaking. But that doesn't happen immediately. It's not like you get the parts and it's registered. Like you get the parts, you produce the weapon, and then at some point before it gets sold, yes, it has to be registered. So if the ATF is investigating this compound for holding unregistered firearms before they're even sold, because correct me if I'm wrong, but there was no proof of any sale with this group, right?
I believe that's what the ATF was trying to prove by sending in the informant they did. They were sending him in, and he was constantly asking David himself. Actually, constantly would talk to David, who only greeted him with friendly banter and kindness. Actually, he would constantly ask him, "Hey, you got any guns?" You know, it's like suspect things. And David caught on. Eventually, it was found out that the incoming raid was going to happen because he ended up seeing weapons, but David refused to sell them. So the informant ended up actually telling David about the incoming attack or raid, and that tipped off the Davidians, which brings me into the siege itself because that's the second thing that happens in my timeline here. But I would like to just first comment and bring it back to the Ruby Ridge for a second, because in Ruby Ridge, the first thing that happened in the tragic series of events was the ATF agents staked out at the man's house. Were uncovered by the teenage boy who was walking the dog, because they had a teenage boy living on their property who was staying there, and he was walking the family dog, and the dog uncovered the agents, and they shot the dog, and then they proceeded to shoot the boy, which then led, after shooting him, then the wife got hit with the baby, and it was a big thing. But the first thing they did was shoot the dog, and you said that they learned from their mistakes after Ruby Ridge and applied them to Waco. The first thing that happened when they came onto the property was they killed not only the dog, they killed all of the dogs. Because they killed like several dogs. It was a lot of dogs. I mean, it was a lot of dogs. So I just think that proves there. But that's just a minor thing. But what I wanted to say was about that was the ATF knew the Davidians were tipped off, but they decided to pursue with the raid anyway, which I think is a little bit irresponsible.
I thought that was also quite bad, but I just want to circle back to
So
the
you knew
intent.
about that?
Yeah, I know that they were they already knew that they were tipped off. That I didn't agree, but the Davidians did open fire on the agents, and many agents did die. But even
Many. How many?
it was Wait, sorry.
How many?
It was like
I
more
can
than
answer that
20.
question.
It's like
More than
If you don't
20?
know- no,
Wait,
no,
whoa,
no,
whoa,
no,
whoa.
no,
Did
no,
you just
no,
say
that's
more
incorrect.
than 20?
20 ATF agents did not die.
It was
at the
4.
Wacos. Yeah, it was
Four.
4.
And that any loss of life is
no, I'm
tragic.
injured.
Injured.
20 were injured.
We're not talking about
Yeah,
that.
but
Do you?
that's not what we asked.
20 injuries is nothing compared to the amount of casualties on the other side.
No, but they killed themselves by lighting the
They
fire.
get what?
Well, we gotta get to this like one at a time. Like, you know, this will come up like as we keep going. But right now, we have to address this first.
Wait, can
Like,
we circle
the
back
beginning
to
of
the
the siege.
to the
The beginning, the timeline
to
order.
the license real quick?
I want
Just
to move
real-
on.
real
real
quick,
quick.
real
We
quick.
don't say it. Just what
Move
do you
on.
want to say? Just say it.
Because you also need a business intent to. You can't just stockpile weapons if you have the FFL. Also, you have to be a certified.
Says who?
It says the federal law to make automatic weapons. You can't just make them
So-
to stop.
Well, I want you to.
Well-
Don't comment on this. I just
You
want
need-
you to.
you
I want you
need
to
to-
consider that this is all 1993. So your sources may be for now. I want you to consider that.
No,
I'm
it's
just
from
gonna leave that out
1993.
there.
The FFL.
I mean, I can
Let's
respond
move
to
on.
this.
the
No,
FFL.
we gotta move
the
on.
FFL
I see.
was made for manufacturers, and to be a
We're
manufacturer,
moving on.
It's not made just so you can create weapons just to stockpile.
We're moving on. The ATF knew that they were tipped off, and this leads me to another point because I have here Petrelli, an agent, said some agents were taught by personnel at Fort Hood, a nearby army post, how to administer intravenous lines and treat shock and gunfire wounds a few days before the raid. He also said his blood type was written on his neck and leg before the raid. And former ATF agent Robert White testified last week in 1993, writing an agent's blood type on their body was recommended by the military and not standard procedure. Now, frankly, this all
But can you repeat that one more time?
We have the
this.
document
You
right
have
here
he
if you'd
has
like.
this too. He can look at it. This all leads me to believe that the ATF was looking for a fight here, which is similar to what happened in Ruby Ridge. I'm seeing a habitual pattern that the ATF is bothering innocent people of this country they're sworn to protect, and they are just looking for a fight because they're not really doing much wrong here. Not copy and paste that into something. So, how do you feel about that? Do you think they were looking for a fight?
No.
Well, if I may,
Okay, you may.
I would say that, like you did say earlier, you know, the most peaceful way of doing this must be assumed first, and I absolutely agree with that. And my issue with what we're reading here is if they're getting prepared to do this, but at the same time they know by infiltrating the compound beforehand that the weapons aren't being actively used, they're just in the possession of those firearms, then wouldn't what's the word, physical confrontation not be needed, because you know that this group isn't actually using the firearms. So if you brought an agent up to there and said, hey, we have a warrant to investigate this place, we're gonna need you guys, we're gonna have to arrest David Koresh, yes, and at some point we're gonna need you guys to leave so we can do our job. Wouldn't that be a completely non-confrontational way of doing this, and all these lives could have been saved?
But they always prepare for the worst case scenario.
Yeah,
They knew the
absolutely,
Davidians had a ton of weapons, and they always prepare for that's just how the ATF works.
So
They always
I'm
prepare for the
gonna
worst.
say something.
They hope for the best, but they always prepare for the worst.
I don't know if they're hoping for the best by going in to a place that they're expected to be at, and with a known people stockpiling hundreds of weapons legally or not, they possess the weapons. That is an objective fact. So I don't think it was very smart of them to go in there, especially with dozens of armed personnel after they knew that was happening. I don't think that was very smart. But moving on, earlier you mentioned that the ATF agents were fired upon. Here's a quote. Though the plaintiffs say the agents were fired indiscriminately into the building during the raid, the agents say they were ambushed and defending their lives. That's a very neutral quote there, and I would just like to briefly talk about it as the agents say they were ambushed. I have a problem with that phrasing, because how could they be ambushed if they were the ones going there?
Yeah, but
I think
the
that's a
children.
little- that's a
These
little
are
bit.
quotes from children, right? Reporting.
No.
The plaintiffs aren't going to be children, because this is, you know, in
But
the
who
context
were
of
the
court.
The
people-
surviving members of the Davidians.
The Davidians. civilians, but during
of age people.
yeah, but during this, it's very easy to misinterpret who fired first during such a high stakes shootout.
We're not talking. Okay.
Well, yeah, we didn't get there quite
Well,
yet.
here's another thing. This is from a 9-year-old, but this goes directly into what we were talking about, where it's hard to determine who fired first. Mab, who was 9 years old when he left the compound, he was not 9 when he made this statement, and he was not 9 when this happened. He was 9 when he left the compound. I believe he was returning briefly as his father was there. But Mab, who was 9 when he left the compound, said he heard gunfire during the raid, but never saw anyone shooting. I love this quote because it proves, it implies
It opens up a
that
huge conspiracy about Waco.
the ATF, if there was gunfire, but he didn't see anyone shooting, then who would have been shooting? The people
Well-
not inside the building. So no visible people armed inside were firing, meaning that the ATF agents would have been the ones firing.
Well, that's only if we can believe this testimony, because wounded ATF.
Believe it was a testimony. You have to take it. You have to
You
take it.
don't have to take it at face value because you have to take the context. He was in a
You
high,
in this context.
it was a 9-year-old child. It was during a high stakes thing. Also, it's a biased thing. ATF wounded.
biased.
Well,
Wounded.
Don't talk to me
yes.
about biased. What are your sources?
hey,
It's biased
Government
by
websites.
each one will be biased. Wounded ATF soldiers said they met with armed resistance, and when they came there, they already were shooting.
Well, this can't be true, because if they were already shooting, then how would the dogs have been the first people to get shot? Because the timeline of events here, the first thing that happened, and this is on record, the first shots that were fired were the dogs. Now you're gonna tell me they killed their own dogs just to say the ATF did it? That's
No,
ridiculous.
the ATF did kill the dogs, but this.
Those were the first shots fired, because the dogs getting shot made some people think that they were getting shot at, and that could have been why the ATF were getting shot at. But they killed the dogs, and some ATF agents, and this is what I believe happened. They shot the dogs because they were barking. They just don't like dogs for whatever reason. Same
Well,
thing
no, they
happened
killed
in
the
Ruby
dogs
Ridge.
because they were aggressive. They were entering.
They were leashed.
They were entering an unknown area and they were aggressive. So routinely they will.
Routine. That's some
Yeah,
routine there.
routinely during a raid, during a hostile raid.
and in this raid, which is
Which is
routine.
not even
Wait, wait, wait.
not even based on a legal thing that it's a false
Oh, but let's-
illegal pretense for the raid. So I don't think they should be allowed to kill the dogs if they're going in there. They might not have even done anything illegal.
No.
But
That's a
they-
lawsuit if I've
Wait,
ever
but
heard.
I
one.
just would like to intervene. If this is a routine raid, then how come it lasted 50 days? Like, is that routine? Is that normal?
No, it was during a standoff and it was not routine. But when they first raided the
It
compound,
was 51.
Yeah, sorry.
when they first raided the compound, they saw aggressive dogs and were entering
No.
an unknown hostile environment, and then they
Then
killed
don't
the dogs.
So essentially, you're saying like
Well-
it's
well,
still
that's what the
routine.
ATF
It's just
did. They
prolonged, and
suspected-
that can be routine, right? Like that's what
yeah.
you're saying, right?
Well-
But my problem with that is what we know, like for a fact, happened during these 51 days is at nighttime. The ATF would use speakers, like quite literally speakers outside the compound to play noises of, I believe, horses dying, whales in pain, and other animal noises, artificial animal noises to and we don't even understand fully why, because if you go on the ATF's website, they don't explain like what these were for. Everything about them online is from other sources because the ATF doesn't speak about what they did. But my point is, so for whatever reason they were playing these noises, let's say to make the children worried about
To lure them out.
whatever the reason may be. Now we have from a direct source here, Mav, who was 9 when he left, saying that he heard gunfire but never saw anyone shooting. I'm not saying this is fact. I'm just speculating. Could it be possible that the ATF was creating some kind of artificial sound of gunfire that wasn't actually the product of a real confrontation between these two forces? I'm not saying they used a loudspeaker to play a noise of a firearm going off. I'm saying, what if they had firearms going off distantly that weren't actually part of the confrontation at all? Like they're just like sandbagged. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna stop you there. I don't know. Are you talking about the initial raid,
again-
day one? Are you talking about day one?
So that this moment itself, this is the day. This is the first of the confrontation.
Mab's quote comes from the first day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, what I think, I don't like that theory, and I'm just gonna say that when he said he heard gunfire during the raid and never saw anyone shooting, I think that the gunfire that he heard was them killing the dogs, which is the first bullets, and then thereafter them unloading, because the agents who killed the dogs, because there were a lot of agents there, and they were surrounding the building on all sides, obviously. That's like what they're gonna do. But the agents who killed the dogs aren't the same agents who were shooting into the front door of the compound. I think what happened was the agents shot the dogs, and then other agents heard the gunshots and assumed they were being attacked because they knew that they were coming and they knew they were armed. So then they started unloading into the building, which resulted in several casualties on the Davidian side that day.
Well, but the ATF soldiers, it's not that they heard the gunshots. The wounded soldiers said they met armed resistance.
They met
not that they heard anything.
Define resistance?
Well, they met when they came there. They met with hostile resistance, and the Davidians were open firing on them.
Well, they did. It is fact that
Resistance
the Davidians
to
opened
the
fire.
two goals.
But resistance, the word itself implies that they're resisting something. So resistance can't just be unprompted. They resisted the raid because the raid was attacking them. They shot their dogs, and then they started unloading into the front door of the building. So what they did was they returned fire because they're like, who the heck are these people? You know, like they're like, what's going on? Let's open fire because they're killing our kids, they're killing our wives, they're doing all this crap. You know.
You're talking about after they killed the dogs. This does not warrant you firing back at government agents.
It does.
We know that
if they don't have a
absolutely
warrant,
legal to defend yourself against the police
if
a lawful action.
If the
But
cops
this is a
come
lawful
if the cops come onto your property and shoot your dog and then start shooting at you, you're allowed to kill them.
If we can agree that the dog
Kill
was
the
shot
agents.
at first, then this would be unlawful action by the police. Because
Do you disagree the dog was shot first?
you have a right to defend your pet on your property is the entire.
Leon, do you disagree the dog was shot first?
Because I thought we came to the agreement. That's why I'm saying this.
Yeah, the dogs were shot first.
Okay, then what's the problem here? I don't understand.
I mean, look. If someone came to your house,
well, the dogs were aggressive and they posed a threat to the agents.
Didn't the agents not just walk past the dog?
There has to be something that's tried before resorting to killing the dog. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I understand that
barking.
that's not impossible.
Well, they believed that the officers would be under danger from the dogs, so they killed the dogs.
And mind you, this is all
Give me
happening.
a break.
Well, they're not being fired at all. They're
They're literally just walking up to the building and they're getting barked at, and they say, all right, let's kill these dogs because I don't like the loud noise they're making.
Nah, they were too aggressive, so
They're on leash.
Look, I mean,
It's not their dog.
evil dogs aggressive.
yeah, but it's by the nature of a dog's spirit that they're gonna bark at people they don't know. Like, not even in a manner to try and fight them, just in the manner of, I don't know who this is, I'm curious, if I bark at him, maybe he'll give me a response and I can learn more about him, you know what I mean? So,
Well, let's move on.
Yeah.
well, I feel like you should respond to that.
We're at
I already told
we've talked about that
Oh, yeah,
before.
yeah.
We're getting to the end here, so let's move on from that point. All right, we're back after a brief break. We're here. Let's get it. All right, the ATF pumped gas into the compound using armored vehicles after a 51-day standoff. This is the next thing I want to talk about. This is the final day here. We're wrapping up here. This is the last day of the raid, and they did that. They pumped gas into the compound using armored vehicles. How do you feel about that? Keep it brief.
CS gas was classified as non-lethal, and they were just trying to minimize casualties.
Non-lethal.
And
Sorry, yes.
it was classified as not non-lethal, and they were just trying to minimize casualties by ending this standoff.
Yeah, I mean, what you said is true. It's non-lethal, but you're forgetting one key component. It can be flammable.
There we go.
Well, they use the CS gas in riots and barricaded situations all the time, and hostage in this incidents, and they just want to avoid storming the compound to avoid any more casualties.
No, I agree that they, in a barricade suspect, you would want to use CS gas, but maybe negotiation might just be a better approach here because there's so many people in here and it's such a large compound that has a lot of facilities in it, flammable facilities.
Well, they waited
And-
50. The government waited 51 days.
Well,
and
maybe they
didn't
should have
come
just
out.
left.
Well,
Accept
they-
defeat. They're
they-
clearly not winning this one.
they
It's a
had-
lose-lose. Just leave.
well, they had a warrant, and also they're trapped there. The government was actually delivering food to the compound.
Oh, don't give them little pity points. They did the bare minimum. They
So-
fed them.
Okay, but they could have just starved them and waited 51 days for them to come out.
That's practically what they did.
Well, they delivered them food.
They
so-
starved them mentally. They didn't let them sleep.
What do you mean?
They would play whale noises at night.
Buddy, I don't even know what this is.
And look,
this is not confirmed.
It is confirmed. There's
I go to sleep
Well,
to
we
whale
agreed
noises.
on this
not dying
earlier.
whale noises.
If this isn't
When I'm in a
confirmed,
bad
This was already
this
put
is-
into
well,
the
I think what you're
deposition.
trying to say is it's not stipulated.
There-
which
there's
would be correct,
eyewitness.
sure. But we did agree earlier that this happened.
Well, no, this did happen. Like this is a
That's
bet.
also we can find a source.
Well, they
maybe
can
we
still
need.
go to sleep. I mean, they can cover their ears, you know.
But that's like it's not the fact that they can. It's the principle that they're subjecting them
Something
to have
is
to work,
looming
do a
outside.
workaround.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were delivered food. They can eat and then they can
What
go
is-
to
okay.
sleep.
I'm glad they were delivering food. What is that? All right, we're moving on.
And they
Well,
could have surrendered at any time.
They could have, but
And
they didn't. The ATF could have surrendered at any time. That works both ways.
To the
there.
Davidians?
Yes, they could have surrendered by leaving.
You don't think David
Treated.
Koresh would because he is still being arrested? Like, you don't think he would respond to this? He would just stay in his compound forever if they just left?
I think he would have just stayed there. If you
How
said
do you
if
clear
the,
up your name in something like
if the
this?
ATF left,
I'm not sure if
They-
I feel like you're arguing against my point there.
what do you
No,
mean?
look,
If the
if-
ATF
well,
left,
well, let's say
then
the
how would he
ATF
clear his name? He
He would have to show up in court. He would have to, like, he can't just
Yeah, he
never,
would. Exactly. That's why they
leave.
didn't leave.
Well, then that's how they get them. Because if they leave,
'Cause
eventually
look-
people have to go to work. The kids have to go
Yeah,
It was a
exactly.
commune.
outside.
It was a commune.
is.
It doesn't, they don't
They
spend
still have
every
outside
moment
jobs.
there.
Well, they
They
want to
actually-
minimize any damage, so
And
they
look-
just want to stay there and arrest everyone. They
And-
want to finish
And
this
for the
operation.
for the
Yeah,
sake
but
of their
they want-
commune. Sorry, go ahead.
They want to, but sometimes you can't. And an
And
example.
why should they leave? They're surrounded.
Because they can't. They're surrounded. Well, they should leave because they shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Well, they had a warrant.
And I actually have a quote here. It says one of the ATF agents, I believe, during the first day, in his testimony, he said there was no way for us to simply get up and walk out without being slaughtered. We were stuck there. Petrilli said. Maybe they shouldn't have been there in the first
Well,
place.
they weren't going to get slaughtered. They had negotiation.
That was the first day. I just wanted to bring that up because it kind of related to this.
Okay, well,
But-
I'm just saying afterwards they had negotiations for releases, and also they wanted the Davidians to surrender.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, children were released, and by released, I mean they left. They were there on their own accord. No one was forced to be. It wasn't a hostage crisis.
Would I be allowed to?
It was a barricaded suspect.
Excuse me. Just would I be allowed to interject with a non-stipulated source here? Because I feel like there's something like just for the sake of the discussion around Waco in general, there is a really important aspect that we're kind of missing here, and that's why we're float dancing around this idea.
What is it?
Could they negotiate or not? Basically, one of the biggest criticisms against the ATF for the situation at Waco was they didn't establish even though they knew his phone number and they knew how to contact him, they didn't establish a line of communication with David Koresh or anyone in the compound for days. I'm not sure exactly how long, but it didn't happen for a large portion of the 51-day raid. So, when you're saying the ATF can't just leave, they can't just let a criminal on the run. And we also agreed that we have to try the peaceful option first. Why didn't they establish this communication? Isn't this key to saying, look, we'll leave if you surrender David Koresh, because that's who we're here for.
Well,
they-
wait. Can I
they
just
wanted-
ask you something? What's your source? That's this is a source you have there.
Yeah, this comes from the time. It's an article that is basically what's the word? Compiling all of these investigations made by Eric Larson on the ATF's siege at Waco. And this isn't this is obviously secondary source, right? It's not primary to, it wasn't there when it happened. But this in itself, almost a tertiary source, if you may, this investigation was done prior, and this source.
Well, I'm gonna cut you off there. Sorry, but
No,
Gary Nosner was actually the FBI chief hostage negotiator, and he was at Ruby Ridge, but he got kind of what's the word for the
Fatigued,
jurisdiction?
I would
He got
say.
jurisdiction mogged by the ATF, and he was kind of like the ATF took over. So the FBI and the ATF, this was a joint collaboration of both, and the ATF is the ones who were the aggressive ones. The FBI was in charge of the communications throughout, and I don't know when you're saying they didn't talk to them for a few days.
Yeah.
I believe that I do recall that being a thing, but I think the FBI tried to, and the ATF told them not to because it would have gotten in the way of what they were planning, which they were trying to raid the compound again since the beginning, but the FBI was kind of holding them off.
Are you
So-
refraining from speaking on this hearsay, Leo?
Yeah, this is all whack.
Well, I want to
I mean,
move on
bitch
from that.
bash.
The last thing I want to say here is that the plaintiffs also claim the government helped cause at least some of the 3 fires and engulf the compound at the end of the siege. The government says the Davidians started the fires. This has been stipulated for so long, talked about so much. There is no definitive answer here.
Yep.
You can look at the evidence and say the CS gas would have caused it, obviously. All 3, because there were multiple fires, apparently.
Was it 3?
Apparently there were
distinct
3
locations?
distinct locations throughout the compound. And the ATF did use multiple armored vehicles to display the CS gas in multiple spots, so that could have been them.
Well, they use CS gas in
A flammable
in
substance.
barricaded
But
subject.
I think you just have to look at the motivation
but
here.
also,
'Cause why would the Davidians set fire
I mean,
to their own
we
thing?
gotta go one at a time.
Former Senator John Danford spent months gathering testimony and questioning various officials before announcing his findings, and he found that the FBI did not start the fire.
So a government official investigated the government and found that they did nothing wrong.
Yeah. Well, he was a former senator.
Oh. Was
So-
he senator of Texas?
No, it was of Missouri.
Okay, so he's
I mean,
speaking on the
it's one
Texas
take.
incident.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
So he's a
we
third
already
party.
established this
Okay.
goes every way possible, where no one's ever gonna
Yeah.
find the answer.
I
to
just
this.
think that the important thing to note when talking about the fire specifically is motivation, because why would they
Yeah.
Well, it's a cult.
do that?
and
It's
maybe-
allegedly.
Wait,
a lot of
yeah, but you have
cults
to.
beforehand
You say
killed
cult like it's a
themselves.
legal term. Cult
not.
is just a group of people. You're allowed to come and assemble under the First Amendment, even under a
Yes,
religious
freedom of
pretext.
religion.
Even if it's surrounded by a specific figure, a specific person, and others would find it strange. It's not illegal. That doesn't really serve as precedent, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think that I would just like to say something. The ATF is known for violating a lot of laws. Obviously a lot of the sources.
bro.
Well, let me get here. Let me cook here. You're saying that you're citing a lot of their sources saying, oh, they wouldn't lie. They're kind of known for lying, actually. At the incident in Ruby Ridge, the whole operations procedure was just lie, deny, lie, deny. How they got him is they lied to him here, they lied to him here, they lied to him here. Randy Weaver was lied to several times by the ATF themselves, even to the point where we don't know if this is alive, they told him the wrong court date, and then because they told him the wrong court date, he didn't go, and they used it as an opportunity to arrest him, and then Ruby Ridge happened. So I don't think that taking their word at face value for what happened with the fires is necessarily a good idea. I think that you have to take the word of the people who were actually in the building where the fires happened. I think they would know the most, and they're the ones saying that it was the
But I
government.
think we should wrap up. But
I just want to say something else. One of the survivors,
Bro, you gotta stop doing that. That's
Nah,
not fair.
sorry.
one of the survivors said that the cult had such a strong.
Did he use
religious-
the word cult?
Yes.
Survivor from which, was he a Davidian or was he an ATF
Well,
member?
It was a woman, and it was a woman, and she's a survivor. And they didn't say cult, but that's what it is. That it's not like a definitive term. But what it is a cult by definition. They have one strong leader, and everyone is influenced by them.
Frankly, I don't
Yeah,
think
it's not a
even
legal
I'm
Let
not-
me just finish. And the testimony talked about how strong the religious hold had over them, and this woman in particular was more sad just to serve her sad over her failure to serve her God, even more than the deaths and suffering. And she also talked about the accusations that Koresh did abuse children in this compound. So obviously Koresh had a strong hold over the people, so it's not very outlandish to think that they might have started the fire. Many other religious cults before this, around this time, did have a mass suicide.
I feel like you're thinking of
Yeah,
one
I
specific
feel like-
instance of and look,
It happened
also-
multiple times before.
Well, I think that these are two different situations here. You're talking about context a lot earlier. I think that matters here. And once again, you didn't really answer my question. You say she's a survivor. What is her name? Was she a Davidian or was she an ATF agent?
She was a Davidian.
to be fair, a lot
During the
of
raid?
the survivors chose to say things anonymously afterwards, so maybe the name.
Yeah.
It wasn't anonymous.
Okay,
but
I don't
she
need her
said she
name.
was 9 years old, and she was with her father inside the compound.
So she's a 9-year-old. Like you said earlier, we
Yeah.
can't really trust
Yeah.
9-year-olds.
Well, she was next to her father. Well,
You
she
did say
was
that
next
about
to her
our
father
father,
while
but-
she was dying, and also she said, and this was just in general. This was not even a testimony about the firefight in general. This was just the entire culture of the
Well, let me just say
compound.
this, because we're wrapping up
But
here.
you-
And at
Let me
9 years,
say
and at 9 years old,
that
you
even
can have a valid testimony of something of the culture within it.
it
Obviously,
goes- it
I'm
goes
glad
both
we can
ways.
yeah, but it's
agree,
harder
yeah.
when it's just like a short burst of a firefight over like a long period of time of being in the compound.
Yeah, let me just say, I don't really think it matters if it was a cult or not, because that's not why they were there. They were there on the thing. But I'm glad we agree with that. And also, the agents were seen taunting the Davidians during the standoff and took photos in front of the rubble at the end. We had talked about that earlier. I just think it. But to wrap up here, we'll ask one question. Was the ATF responsible for what happened in Waco, Texas? Let's go around the table. Ilion, you?
Yes.
Yes.
Nah.
Alright, well, Leon, thanks for coming on here and talking about your flawed perspective. Ilion, thank you for being you.
I was glad to be here. I really love this, the conversation around Waco and just trying to understand what happened that day. I'll be glad to continue this anytime.
And it's been Oliver, only core member of BBJO podcast here. And, thank you.